Hello Internet, my name is Taliesin.
And I'm Evitel.
And welcome to a special video where we continue talking about Final Fantasy XIV.
Yes.
You have now finished Heavensward, Evitel.
I have. I've moved on to Stormblood, but while it's still fresh in my mind, I want to talk about what may be the greatest story ever told.
That's what I've seen on thumbnails of other YouTube videos. Let's get in on that. Now, I agree with you. I think, the story, particularly of Heavensward, is fantastic, but, a load of other things as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm currently, working on a proper deep dive of it, but I thought it would be really great, we got your opinion on A Realm Reborn.
For the shallow take.
Yeah, not for a shallow take, for an immediate take.
Yeah.
And for your experiences of it and what you think of it. Because you actually finished the expansion not on stream. You streamed most of it, but then you did kind of from what I want to say 3.2 right up until Stormblood, kind of in your own time.
Yeah, kind of most of the juicy stuff, to be fair. I ended up just doing on my own time because I couldn't hold back. I couldn't wait. Tally's been pushing through Shadowbringers, and I'm like, I gotta do this.
Yeah, so just off the bat straight away, as you can see, we're going to be getting into detail on certain things all the way through this video. And other people will notice that, we're not chatting our fireplace thing here.
Right.
This is the set that we use for our T&E Talks channel when we talk about just other media we consume and things like that. So basically, it was all already set up and ready to go.
Yeah.
And we were like, let's use that instead of setting up down in the living room today.
And now that I don't really have to hide my pregnancy anymore.
Oh, yeah. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks, Tally.
But just as a general kind of overall sort of reaction, Heavensward, Evitel.
Heavensward. I loved it. I loved it so much.
What a controversial opinion.
I'm sorry, but I am going to gush. Not literally, but I am going to gush.
Should I, is this the baby thing again?
Yeah, we have the midwife on call. I am going to gush a little bit because I loved playing Heavensward. I loved, getting up to Heavensward. I loved doing it. And now that it's gone, I'm still kind of mourning it. I'm really enjoying Stormblood so far. It's good, but it just is missing the thing that I loved. And so I've been reflecting a bit on, what are the things about Heavensward that really did it for me and what stood out and why am I so obsessed with it?
I would like to know this too. I think I do know why, but I can't wait to find out. So join us as we discuss in 9 parts Evitel's opinion of Heavensward.
Part 1. I would do anything for Amyric.
Okay, let's get this first one down. Let's allow Raoban to see what's going on. I Heart Amyric. Can you explain this, please, Evitel? What's going on? Do I need to be worried? Okay, what's happening?
So there's a little element of fan service here, not gonna lie. But I think Amyric is a really interesting character because I know that people are obsessed with him. I know everyone has
I know someone who is.
Well, no. I know everyone has their Final Fantasy Bae or Daddy or Mommy or whatever you prefer. But I've seen loads of people who are just obsessed with Ser Amyric. I've seen someone on Twitter who named their dog Ser Amyric. I'm like, okay, this is
there any higher praise?
I know, right? And so this is one of the things that I saw floating around even before I started Heavensward. And much like the hype around Heavensward, I was a bit okay, is this the character I'm supposed to really like? And it's is this the expansion I'm supposed to really like? So I think he's a really good example because he's this thing that floats around on the internet where people are like, this is the one, this is the thing, you're gonna love it. And because of that and because of my nature, the instant someone says that, I'm like, I'm not gonna love this.
I'm the exact same, this natural repellent.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. If anything, hearing that, I'm like, good, now I know who not to like.
But then he appears though, right? And he's got all that beautiful curly emo hair, and the little eyes, and he's all oh, I'm so glad that you're here.
But eventually, he really grew on me. For a lot of reasons, because he's this he's so pure and he's really really straight-laced. He's just good.
So what was it that changed his mind? Because I gotta admit, when I was playing through Heavensward, because when I play through Final Fantasy expansions, I've always I'm enjoying it on its own terms, but I'm always kind of thinking what will Evitel think of this as well? Because I think about you a lot.
Aww.
When it got to the bit with Amyric where it turned out he was the illegitimate son of our main baddie. Mm-hmm. I remember thinking if I wasn't already predisposed to like Amyric, this would not make me like him more. Mm-hmm. This would actually genuinely make me like him less. As it happens, I like him anyway, but the whole thing of I just also happen to be heir to the throne,
Had
basically.
to be very important.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What was it that made you like him?
It was this like slow burn. It was just over the course of the whole thing. The more you bump into Emmerich, like at first he's just a bit of a diplomat. He's really like, we might help you, right? You've got Horschiffant who's drooling over you from like day one, and I'm like, no.
Try hard.
I'm just exactly. I'm like, I'm the warrior of light. I have my options.
Did Horschiffant try hard enough in the end to make you like him?
Well, we are going to talk about that. We're definitely going to talk. So so I eventually grew to like really care for, weirdly, this character that all the signs were telling me not to, or maybe all of my like personal signs were like. And I thought this was really interesting because when I see Heavensward, I'd heard so much about Heavensward. I'd heard that it's the best thing ever and you're gonna love it, and so even with that I was like, maybe I'm not going to like this as much as everyone's telling me I'm going to. And yet I did. I'm saying that Emmerich is like a good parallel. Like I ended up really loving Emmerich, much like I ended up really, really loving Heavensward.
Kind of despite yourself.
Exactly.
But I wouldn't say that, like, because I remember you starting Heavensward.
Yeah.
And I remember you being pretty sold on it pretty early on.
Okay, fine.
Like, literally the second you walked in that city, you were like, and you were coming down, you're like, Tally, this city is amazing. I'm like, I know. So and you're like, have you seen it? It's all like, it's got towers and stuff and it's all snowy. I was like, yeah, I know. It's like, have you seen the costumes? Everyone's like, I'm going to get me some of those costumes. Oh, it's going to be I was like, I have played it, Evitel. Yeah. It's like, oh, yeah, but look at this. And like every dinner time for ages, you'd come to dinner and you were like, oh my God. Did you know that there's this dragon? I was like, I do know, but thanks for telling me again, I guess. So I wouldn't say that your like love of Heavensward was a slow burn.
No, you're right. But they are like parallels in that I was ready to not like either of them.
Sure.
I was ready to be a bit anti-Heavensward.
Would you say it was like the build-up to Heavensward, like at the end of ARR, that kind of really got you in the mood for it?
And actually, I thought it had a great build-up. Like, I loved seeing Ishgard in the distance, and I loved, like, when you first set foot in it. And, like, the first time you go to Camp Dragonhead, and you hear the music, and you're like, oh my God, like, this is intense. Is it always going to be like this? And I remember, like, messaging you and being like, is this music always playing? Because it's kind of like hardcore, just the organs going. So I think the build up definitely like Yeah.
And the fact that you're kind of like basically stood outside the gate looking at it from the end of
and
Realm
you can't get into the gates.
If you were waiting for the Heavensward expansion to launch, I think that's a really amazing thing.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm not in the mood to compare it to other MMOs really, but like, you know, it's so often in MMO expansions, you know, the expansion launches and you go to the place and like that's the first time you see it. And that does happen in Heavensward as well. Like obviously you don't get inside Ishgard before the expansion actually starts or anything, but it being there and being this kind of like really cool outline, and you've been on the bridge to there and stopped a big dragon from attacking at that point as well in the Realm Reborn kind of patch stuff,
which is one of my favorite
exactly
trials.
So you've been on the very doorstep of Ishgard. You've already like saved Ishgard by the time the expansion even starts. You know, I guess the intro, like, it sold you on Ishgard and Heavensward before it started, but not Ser Amyric, I guess.
No.
Okay.
Number 2, the Roadtrip.
Okay, right. This is like one of the things that inspired me to do my deep dive video on Heavensward, because it was such like an interesting way for an MMO to tell a story specifically. But what do you mean by this?
So the Roadtrip is kind of at the core of the storytelling of Heavensward, at least in the beginning of it, right? This is the bit where you're with Alfie, and you team up with a cast of unlikely characters.
Almost like a fellowship.
Oh, you don't say. With Ysayle, or Lady Iceheart, who, okay, I mean, we were talking about Emmerich before, but she kind of does it for me. I
was sold on her from the very second I saw her.
Same.
Like, because, you know, she pops up and you think she's just going to be like a patch thing in Realm Reborn, you know, and you're like, well, she's just the baddie that they've introduced for the patch, right? And you know, we'll get rid of her and stuff. And that's kind of what happens. But then when she comes back and she's obviously like this major part of, in hindsight, you know, the fact that she loves doing it with dragons should have been a giveaway, really, that she would feature in Heavensward.
Yeah.
And she gets better and better and better. And for me, completely subverted my expectations of what she was going to be. Because actually, within the Fellowship, I felt like Estinien almost played the role that I thought she was going to play.
Yes, and that's another thing. So we've got Ysayle, who eventually joins us in our kind of quest. And then we've got Estinien as well. Estinien Wormblood. And Ysayle and Estinien are both like, they're polar opposites in a lot of ways. They're similar in a lot of ways. They're both a bit hot-headed and they're both quite intense.
They are both fanatical in their own way.
Yeah.
Like when we first meet Ysayle, she's literally sold as a fanatic.
Yeah.
You know,
like
when we meet
Ice
Heart, she's got the cult going on, right? And she's like, I will lead the people to the truth, which ironically is like what the baddies in Heavensward, like very much the kind of stance they take. And ends up being very much like a theme of Heavensward. I can't wait to talk about like the overall themes and stories of it, because like I think it's like so simple and so focused and so brilliant, and like every character in it represents those themes in some way. And Ysayle is sold to us as this cult leader essentially at first.
Yeah, and then you've got Estinien on the other side of the coin, who is, well, he's also a bit fanatical, but he's fanatical about destroying dragons.
And it's understandable because like they've been at war for like 1,000 years or whatever, and you know, he personally has kind of defended the city against countless attacks and seen, you know, devastation at the hands of the dragons. He is shown as being like this ruthless kind of force for dragon slaying pretty much all the way through, whereas we do see Ysayle kind of soften in her stance quite early on in the journey, really.
Yeah, she gets corrected pretty early on. So you've got these two like quite opposing figures traveling with you, and Alfie.
And Alfie has just come off the back of the end of A Realm Reborn, which was incredibly chastening for him.
Yeah.
You know, he's
got like a big slap on the wrist.
And more, man. Like, he set up the Crystal Braves in the Realm Reborn stuff. They predictably and beautifully and wonderfully, and I'll still love Realm Reborn forever just for this, turned on him and just like chucked him out. So he has kind of like, that was him stepping up and becoming the kind of the diplomatic and action creating leader that he kind of obviously saw himself as. He's very, you know, in early Final Fantasy XIV, he's very presumptuous, and he has like this kind of reek of privilege about him, and his heart is clearly in the right place. There is like a real sense of kind of entitlement to him, which is undermined a lot at the end of Realm Reborn. So he is, you know, chastened at the beginning of this. It is like a common character point from here on in, right through the Shadowbringers, like, really.
Do you remember how often he goes, And then with them is, of course, you, the Warrior of Light.
And your little dragon sidekick who you picked up.
Yes, who I had on my shoulder, Midgard Summer, the little dude. Because you get the minion of him, right, too, and I just had him on all of the time. So that's your cast of characters. You're on this kind of buddy trip, and you're going to eventually to like parley with the dragons, you know, much to Estinien's disgust.
Well, Estinien's like, I'm going to come with you because
I'm
like
kill him.
When this goes wrong, I'm going to kill him, right? And like, I'll give you a chance to do your talking, right?
And then you're on the road. So I think Heavensward is the first expansion where the ether currents come into play, right?
Yes.
Where you collect the currents and then they eventually let you fly. Which at first I was like,
I gotta collect these things.
Do I have to collect
them? And they make me go faster, and then they make me fly.
Okay. However, like the first time I went through, like the Western Curthis Highlands or whatever, and it's just you and you're slow and you're on your little chocobo and it's snowing and it's like a whiteout and you just see kind of dragon bits and like crumbled cities and buildings all around you, and the music kicks in and you find your first little swirly ether current. I was like, oh, that's amazing. So there's this, and you're going to talk about this more when we do a proper video on this, but the actual, like the journey in Heavensward, when you're with that group, like there's the physical journey of going through the land, collecting these currents, doing your quests, but it actually feels like an exploration.
And this is something I'm working so hard to try and put my finger on. Like, you know, all RPGs, all MMOs, have similar things, right? Where you're going on a journey and you're traveling to a new zone, to a new land.
Yeah.
What is it about Heavensward that kind of nails it so hard? We both feel the same about this, like loads of other people do as well. Like it just does it so well, but why?
It's tough because that kind of thing can be so annoying. Like when I first heard about the ether currents, I was like, no, God.
Are you saying it's the ether currents that makes it like that?
No, it's part of it. It's like at first you realize you are going to have to physically walk and run around a lot. Okay, fine. So there is that element. There's something about the zones and the landscapes that I think like lend themselves to it so perfectly, especially like, you know, Western Kurthus and then the Chocobo Forest even. They're like I felt like I was exploring, which I haven't felt in an MMO in that way for a long time. And that has to do with, the zone, kind of the structure, but also knowing that every time I stop, I am stopping to kind of continue the journey with my friends. We stop at some points and we set up camp, and there's like one really beautiful scene where we all sit down together around the fire at night and like we all kind of open up to each other about, you know, how we're feeling. And Alfie talks about all the things he's gone through and how his perspective has changed. And Ysayle softens, and so does Estinien. And we don't really trust each other completely, but we know that we have to. And because it's punctuated with stuff like that, I was like, I'm totally down for this journey.
You're right. And that's actually something that hadn't kind of occurred to me, really. I think you go into a new zone, you know, and in a new expansion, and you're playing in the new zone, and you know there are other zones, right? So like, you know that you'll go to this other zone, you know you go to this other zone. You do have characters that lead you to a settlement or whatever, and then you get sent to another settlement or something, and that will eventually lead you along the path literally to another zone, like this does. But in other MMOs, you tend to get to a place and then do the zone, you know?
Yeah.
And like once you've done the zone, that's when you go to the next one.
Yeah.
With this one, there's very much a sense that you're discovering this place, but then you're moving through. And there are other quests there and stuff, but I know I am very much just focused on the main story quests and stuff. You don't want to waste all those other quests for when you're leveling up all your other jobs and stuff for a start. But like, you know, so I'm very much so focusing on the main story quest. So it's always like, I've come to this place fully aware that I can now come back anytime I want.
Yeah.
And you know, I will one day visit this place again. But at the moment, we're just passing through. And that thing of like, you know, nearly all, like there are bits where you're like, okay, well, we need to do this thing for this person so that they will help us with this. So we have to go out and help them with their problem, which is like standard MMO fare. But there is like this constant sense of moving on. You know, it's like, okay, great, they've helped us, let's go. And there's still these quests. There's still this place that you barely even kind of explored, but you're moving on. And you know that when you... half the time when you get to the place you're going to and you click on the guy with the main story quest thing above his head, you're right, half the time you're not even going to be given more quests. You're going to sit by a campfire and have a chat and things like that. And it really did feel like every time we went into a new zone, there was a sense of like, I am traveling across this map, and it does feel like a journey, and it does feel like a fellowship, and like, you know, and no MMO has ever made me feel like that before. Yeah,
same. And even though that's just part of the story, it doesn't last forever as well. It's just so great. And the places that you go, I felt, become like kind of more fantastical. And then there's another thing, and this is maybe just me personally, but I think there's something really romantic, particularly about like long journeys across cold and ice. Like it just really works. And like there are loads of other stories that use this a lot. So I'm going to say this again, but like my favorite book in the world is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin.
I did not know that.
Check it out. But there is like an entire huge portion of the book is just a journey across the cold and ice. And the journey, there's like the physical journey, and then there's the journey that happens when the characters sit down in the tent at the end of the day and they're cold and they're hungry and they only have each other and they talk. And to me, when I saw like those campfire episodes in this journey, it made me feel the same way.
I love that. The physical journey and the character journey.
Yeah, and
you know, is easier to do in a straight RPG.
Yeah.
And you know, the story parts of Final Fantasy XIV are built more like a straight RPG than other MMOs, which is like, you know, gives it an advantage in that. But I think it does it better than a lot of straight RPGs as well, frankly.
Yeah.
I think it's like that just feeling of forward motion. And of course, helped by the incredible like diary narration. Every time you go into a new zone and you have the voiceover. She came.
Did she?
like quite a lot. You did say you were going to be gushing about it. So like, as far as the zones go, in that journey, and in fact, in the entire expansion, what were your faves? Because I noticed there isn't a zones post-it note up here, so I feel like this is the time to ask.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I loved Ishgard. We're going to talk about Ishgard in a second. I love Western Kurthus Highlands. It's like one of the starting zones.
Yeah.
It's just outside of
so
Camp Dragonhead.
empty.
Exactly. It's so empty.
That's something I love about Final Fantasy XIV zones in particular, and it's true even in Shadowbringers. I love how they're just not afraid to make it basically empty.
Yeah.
You know? And it's this thing of like, it looks really good, it looks really pretty, but essentially there's not much in it.
No.
You know? And that actually is really great from a kind of fantasy point of view a lot of the time.
I loved that. And then actually like right at the end of Heavensward, I loved Azizla. I loved the kind of final zone.
Oh, the Allagan floaty zone?
Yeah, the Allagan
I hate
floaty
that.
zone.
It's my least favourite zone.
It.
I hate that kind of thing.
Way.
Okay, so I liked it because it felt like a console.
Yeah.
Final level.
Yeah.
You know when like you're playing a video game and the final level is just it's black and red and just bad and
evil.
You know,
It is a bad place.
It's like this is where all the baddies live, and there's a sensation of that definitely. And for me, I was not enjoying that zone at all until suddenly you got a dragon and your dragon's flying you around, right? And then suddenly I was like, this is like the most magical thing that's ever happened.
Exactly. That is the moment when Midgard Zomer is finally like, well done. You've proven yourself. You've recollected all of your crystals, right? And he's like, You've done good. You want to ride? And then you fly around, and I was like, that is amazing. That is like truly epic. Now I am riding the dragons.
It's like now I don't have to find the teleporters.
Oh my god, yeah. Thank God.
The zones that really do stick in my mind are the ones that you go through on that journey for some reason. So you know when you first go into out of the Western Highlands, first go out of Kurthus, and you go into, and it's like this is where the dragons are from, and you know it's kind of like it's not very magical looking, it's just very old looking, which I think is amazing. You know, like I can see other games and be like, this is where the dragons are from, so the trees are all windy like this, and do you know what I mean? It's like there are big glowing fruits and stuff, and you know, because it's magical, it's where dragons are from. And that zone totally didn't do that. It just made everything look really old. Yeah. And I loved that so much, and I thought it was so brilliant. The only thing I will say about that zone though is, you know, when you the first guy that you meet in the town, and you're like, how do you live here with all the dragons flying over the place? And he's like, you see these massive canopies everywhere? We hide under the canopies. No one can see us because of the massive canopies. And you're like, did I see that right? And you go outside and there ain't no massive canopies.
There's a bit with trees.
There's a bit with some trees, but like I specifically walked under them. I was like, I don't feel protected from dragons. I don't feel like a dragon wouldn't see me right now. And that's like ignoring most of the open space that I've been walking through up until this point.
Yeah.
And like that's just a kind of, you know, they didn't have the resources to make it like it should have been. So like there's an element of suspension of disbelief there. Which I was more than happy to give it because I was having a great time. But when he first mentioned that, I was just a bit confused. He was like, we hide under these big, thick trees. I was like, huh?
I know another zone that you liked.
What?
You liked the bit with Matoya's cave.
Oh, Matoya's cave was amazing. And I loved that whole kind of... so my understanding is that whole city has been in other Final Fantasy games and things like that.
Yeah, well, that's Charlene. That's where Alfie comes from.
Exactly.
The scholars come from, right? I was actually underwhelmed by that.
Really?
Yeah, because it's just this abandoned city, and you kind of just run through it to get to Matoya's cave.
But it feels so homely because of where you've been before. Like, this was actually a city and people actually lived here, and there are nice houses that look like they'd be quite nice to live in and stuff like that. And yeah, it's full of baddies and goblins and stuff now. Yeah. But that was the first moment where I was like, oh, sanctuary.
That reminds me, the Moogle zone, like, just, I completely forgot about the Moogle zone. It's cute.
And it's so windy. That's what I like about that zone. Like, it genuinely feels quite dangerous with all the wind and stuff. And that really adds, because you can see like the dragon sort of throne essentially, like a big kind of building where you meet your dragon later on, and just the wind and the harshness of those elements because you're so up high and stuff. Just I loved it all. I thought it was brilliant. Yeah.
I'm still trying to understand the role of Moogles in this universe. Like, they're sometimes very important. Like, they have the horn that you have to blow to summon Kreisvelger. Like they've got some important bits to play, but they're also just. I do think back, and I do love the bits where you talk to Ysayle, and she's like, "They're really cute, aren't they?" And Estinien's like, "Get me out of here."
Yeah. Ysayle is like a full-on kind of change there.
She's like, "Oh,
absolutely," because like we were talking about the way Ysayle kind of. We change our view to Ysayle a lot more in that journey than we do Estinien. Like Estinien is very much kind of non-moving in his commitment to his cause, and like Ysayle's not giving up on her cause or anything, but she does seem a bit more open-minded to changing her stance on the people around her, at least, and becomes a much more kind of sympathetic character than maybe I was expecting.
Yeah.
But then, having said that, even Estinien, when we sit down and have that kind of campfire thing, he's like, "Oh, you know what? Ysayle, you were right. How can I deny that men and dragon used to live together in harmony when I see it? Like, it's here. But it doesn't matter."
Yeah.
Like that was 1,000. Like, it doesn't matter if what I've been told is a lie. At the end of the day, a dragon's still going to eat me.
Yep.
I'm still going to kill him. It's like it's kind of, you were right, but it just doesn't matter.
This is a good segue into point number 3. Holy shit, dragons.
Dragons! Because I had to write it down because I didn't know if I'd remember to talk about dragons otherwise. And I'm glad we did. Yeah, so obviously, Heavensward is about dragons. It's about sexing dragons.
Well done.
It's about fighting dragons. It's about learning about dragons. And it's about like their kind of place in the world. So, go.
So, I am a big fan of dragons used in fantasy media, but really like a particular type, like the kind of, it's popular, the kind of quite like ancient, kind of timeless dragons that, because they exist for so long, humans are but like a speck on their radar. And sometimes it's a bit lame, but sometimes they can be used really, really well. The dragons in like Avatar: The Last Airbender were incredible, and the Dragon Prince.
Dragon Prince dragons are like my ideal
They're
dragon.
so good.
Because as some people know, I'm a big World of Warcraft fan.
Oh,
but
you don't say.
I hate the dragons.
No, I wouldn't say you're a fan. I have another word for you.
I hate the dragons in World of Warcraft. Like, for me, like World of Warcraft dragons, and I'm saying this about a game that I love very, very much, but I've never ever liked how they do dragons. I'm not a big fan. For a start, I think like the dragon models all look a bit cuddly. Okay. But also, I'm not a fan of generally when dragons are able to take human form.
Yes.
Like, I like dragons because why? Like, for me, dragons just shouldn't care about humans. Or if they do, it's like, oh, I care about this human, I'm going to have to squash them. Like, like they are like ants. It's like me taking an ant form, right? Why would I do that? Like, so I can talk to the ants? No, let them come and try and talk to me up here.
You can be like Paul Rudd.
Well, yeah, exactly. I know you'd like that.
Because he's this big.
But he is this big.
This big. I mean,
right,
not just when he's Ant-Man.
You weren't even talking about Ant-Man. You
were
literally talking about his actual height.
He's like this
I like dragons to be these big. Yeah, like we've existed forever. You can't even comprehend the things we know and the things we've seen. And like, you might impress me enough to deign to talk to you for a little bit, or we might develop a relationship. But like, the idea that I would take a form to live among things that you've made.
I'm with you.
And like the dragons in WoW have always just seemed just a bit too easily impressed, frankly. And a bit too concerned with our problems. Yeah. And I'm just always like, nah, man. And Dragon Prince, like the blind dragon in Dragon Prince.
So good.
One of the best scenes.
Love that one.
Of dragon that I've ever seen in like any media. Like where they have to pass through the gorge and the blind dragon is there. Yeah. Like, that is a dragon right there.
Yeah.
That's an effing dragon. Yeah. And like Final Fantasy XIV dragons are very much more that.
They are in that vein, right? Even just their whole like design and style, just a bit gnarlier and horny sometimes. Horns with actual horns.
They're kind of like
multiple strange wings.
I would even go as far as to say they're more bird-like than lizard-like.
Yeah. They're like really quite kind of horrible and magnificent, which is, dragons, good dragons do both. They're kind of grotesque but like beautiful and amazing.
And I want it like when we blow the horn for Osfelga, I want to feel like oh, holy shit, a dragon is going to talk to us.
Yeah.
Like, are we going to talk to a dragon now?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
You know, and like I got a genuine sense of awe the first time he kind of flew down and like deigned to talk to us, because it'd been built up so beautifully. And we'd killed like worms on our way there and stuff. And we had chatted to other dragons, right? And helped them out. But there was something about when he arrived, I was like, oh boy, I'm going to actually like, I'm like in the center of the universe here, you know?
Ultimately, the story of Heavensward is the Dragon Song War, this endless war between humankind and dragonkind, which has been ongoing, particularly with Ishgard. So the people of Ishgard and dragons. And Shiva, who we were talking about before, is at kind of the core of the story, because the idea is that she had a thing for dragons.
One dragon in particular.
One dragon in particular, and that's Hraesvelgr. And they actually fall in love, and they form a relationship. And it's their love that first convinces humans and dragons to be like,
which I've got to say,
we can do this.
Is not something I really buy.
No.
Look, this isn't a complaint. I'm completely going with it because I love the story so much. And I love the way it's told as well. And I love like every single tiny thing about it. And it's only like weeks after the event that I kind of think about it. And when I was playing through it for like the third time, right, in making this video, that I kind of like, do I really buy that a dragon, you know, like they're there, they are fighting, they're wiping each other out. And then suddenly, because a dragon and a person fell in love, suddenly they're like, oh, and he ate her because he loves her so much.
Hey,
well,
that's
we've got to stop fighting,
important.
right? Well, but I don't know if I buy that would end a war, right?
No, but you have to, like with a lot of things in Final Fantasy, you just have to accept that, like, the power of love and friendship.
Yeah, I do. I happily accept it, but I don't know, man. I just feel like, you know, if the UK and the US were at war and trying to wipe each other out, and like we fell in love, and you know we loved each other so much that you were like, yo, you're gonna have to eat me. I was like, what do you think I've been? And then you mean no, literally eat me. Yeah, and then I did. I just don't know if, like, you know, Biden would phone up Boris Johnson and be like, yo, did you hear about those two people? Yeah. And one of them was US and one of them was UK, and they fell in love and she got et. We got to stop fighting right now, friend. It's like, whoa, holy shit, did that really happen? Yeah, okay, well, let's build some statues about how much we love each other. Let's do it. I just don't know. I really appreciate that we live in a universe here in 14, which is so kind of romantic that can kind of happen.
It is so romantic. That's the thing.
I'm not complaining.
So
Please
romantic.
don't worry. I'm just like pointing out that I don't really buy it, but I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
you know?
It is cruel but romantic. But yeah, as long as you go with that, that's kind of the key point kind of in the history between dragons and humankind. And yeah, Shiva loves Hraesvelgr so much that rather than die and live her mortal life, obviously he's going to live forever, she asks him to eat her. To eat her soul, which I think involves eating her body as well.
I hope so.
Yeah.
What a waste that would be otherwise.
Yeah. And he's like, I don't know, that's not really what I'm into. And she's like, please.
I love him telling the story as well. He's like, I didn't want to.
Yeah, but
she was very insistent. Yeah. So she got et.
Yeah. So I did it. And like in this ultimate act of love and sacrifice, he eats her.
And he's still mourning that now.
He's mourning her forever. But of course, he carries her soul. And it's one of the things that makes him kind of stand off from the bigger dragon battle that's been going on for so long. He's a bit like...
It kind of softens his stance on it.
Yeah,
he's just
exactly.
Yeah. So like since the Great Peace was introduced after she got et, that has since kind of fallen away again. The people in Ishgard think it's because the dragons betrayed it. We then learn differently. We learned that it was because the people of Ishgard found out that dragon eyes are really awesome and full of like loads of amazing power.
Lots of
and
power.
They were like, yo, let's go get some dragon eyes. And that's what they did. They went and got some dragon eyes, right? And then when Nidhogg learned what they were doing, he went to kind of fight them and they were like, go for the eyes, fam. And they were like, yeah. And so this big kind of revelation that it was humans and their lust for power that ruined this peace. And It's an interesting one because it leads us on to like the themes of the entire expansion.
Yes, yeah. Which is sometimes history tells us one thing, but that might not be the right thing.
And so the meme theme of Heavensward is like religion bad, F dragons.
Yeah.
Which I'm absolutely fine if that's all you get from it. Like screw religion, but really screw dragons. Right? If that's the only message you take from Heavensward, then you're not doing it wrong.
No.
That's absolutely fine.
No.
But there is one of the things I love about it is there is a genuine kind of meta discourse happening in this expansion. Do we have a thing about it? In fact,
I mean, I was just thinking about dragons. Okay. Dragons are a good way to kind of talk about the story.
Let's talk about it now then, because I think the themes are like fascinating because and like completely up my alley. We were talking about in the Realm Reborn one, how a lot of people haven't quite woken up to just how like based Final Fantasy XIV is, and the themes in Heavensward I think are literally a peak of its baseness,
100%.
Right? And like there's gonna be a moment if there's ever a bad expansion for Final Fantasy XIV where a whole bunch of people turn around and go, wait, this game's really woke. They'll only notice when there's a bad expansion, and then they'll be like, this game's really woke. I hate it. Yeah. Have you seen how woke they've gone? They've gone broke. It's like item A in the evidence, Heavensward, right? Because like the themes are very much. I mean, let me put it this way, right?
Okay.
The theme is very much how secrets are kept by people in power to better facilitate their power by not allowing people to know what their ancestors actually did.
Yeah.
Which...
It's a bit of a mouthful.
Okay, there's another way of saying it. You're not going to like this.
Uh-oh.
Critical race theory.
Oh. Uh-oh.
No, but that's literally what critical race theory is, right? Yeah. It's like, the situation that we're in right now, it's because, and we don't really learn about this, but maybe we should learn about what happened before that caused this. And a lot of people don't want us to learn about what happened before because they're like, what's the point? Were you saying we should all feel guilty for it? And no, that's not what anyone's saying at all. But like clearly, it's better to know, right, what the actual causes of the situation. Yeah, exactly. It's better to know what the actual causes of the situation that you're in were.
Yeah. However, even when you do learn the truth, it's not necessary that you're going to go with it, and it's not necessarily going to change your mind.
And something I love about Heavensward and the patch content of Heavensward in particular. So you get this like massive revelation that so Ishgard is organized in a way where you've got like the powerful families, and the powerful families in Ishgard are powerful because it was their ancestors that defeated Nidhogg.
Yes.
Right? Like when Nidhogg came for no reason at all to attack, and they managed to fight Nidhogg back, and they took his eye out, both of his eyes out. Those people that were there, they became like the start of the great houses.
Yeah.
Who live in relative opulence and privilege, and as opposed to the dirty scumbags who live down below
in
the dangerous part of the city, because it's the bit that gets attacked by dragons first.
And it's like held up by just makeshift like poles.
And it's clearly like the undercity sort of thing. And the reason why that's okay, that kind of inequality in the city, is because their descendants weren't in that little gang of people that kind of killed the dragon.
And people accept this.
Yeah, and we find out throughout the course of the base expansion that actually everyone's descendants, ancestors, did help defeat Nidhogg, and actually everyone should be treated the same. And like there is like this certain kind of moral quandary there of, it's good that you've decided everyone should be treated the same, but I'm not sure your reasons for like wanting equality suddenly are actually good reasons. It's like going, we were perfectly happy with an unequal system where some people had loads of stuff just because, and some people didn't have loads of stuff just because. But now we found out that actually in the past a different thing happened, so now we don't want inequality anymore. It's like, I just don't think you should want inequality anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there is that, and that is such like a huge part of the story. And then there's the revelation, right, that Ratatoskr, who's Nidhogg and Hraesvelgr's sister, was like brutally butchered when the Taliesin, when the original knights realized what was happening, and King Thordan was there, realized that they could take great power from her.
Yeah, she's the first one they went for.
Exactly, and Nidhogg basically since then, you sympathize with with him a bit. You're like, okay, he just wants revenge, like, and he's gonna get it however he wants to, and it's gonna last probably forever until everyone is wiped out. And you're like, okay, you know, sure, that sucks, but one way to go about it. What's really interesting is that the story is kind of revealed and told in different ways, and obviously the Holy See and Thordan in Ishgard have been telling one particular story in which they were never the aggressors, you know, they were just protecting their city, and then you learn otherwise kind of from the dragons, and everyone thinks slightly differently. But once you all learn the truth, I mean, this has huge consequences in Ishgard.
There's a mix of reactions. Some people are like, oh, cool, and a surprising, from a video game narrative perspective, if not like a real life point of view, a surprising amount of people, including in the Brune, are like, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
That's just not true.
Yeah.
Like,
well, one of the things I really loved was in kind of the patch content is when we try to broker an actual peace. And Vidofnir, the dragon, is to come to Ishgard. Amyric is going to unveil this like beautiful work of art showing dragons and people in harmony, and you get this like rebellion of people who believe the story, but are still like, peace doesn't bring back all of my loved ones who have died. And that ends in tragedy as well, that whole scenario. And I loved how it showed how fragile all of this is. It's not like, okay, hey, we've got the real story now. Now we can live in peace and harmony with the dragons, and everything can change and it can be okay. But like, no, like people accept it as true for the most part, but they don't want to go with it.
Yeah, they just don't care. Like Estinien, right?
Yes.
When Estinien is sitting there in the campfire and he's like, I can't deny this is true now, but it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, and that's very much kind of the reaction of a lot of the people, even though, I mean, if the people in the Brune are like, yeah, okay, we stand to gain quite a lot by this, you know, like, you know, what, we're all in great houses now, this is fantastic, like, you know, and they still kind of emotionally react against it, which is fascinating. So we discover that the whole motivation of this entire war, from the Ishgardian perspective, not the dragon perspective, has been a lie this whole time, and that is, you know, the biggest manifestation of the main theme of the expansion, which is people in power lying to keep power, basically, and you know, hurting those that they're in power over. It's very simple, right? Okay, but like it's explored in so many different and complex ways. In like on the scale of the entire narrative of the expansion, but also on the scale of like individual character journeys as well. And
they all react differently to it, and that's how you get all these different perspectives of people who accept but aren't unwilling, but who totally accept, or who are like fanatical about it.
And some people are doing it for their own gain.
Always.
Some people are doing it for, it's kind of always for their own gain. You're right, but like some people are doing it purely for their own gain. Some people are doing it because they believe that having the power it gives them allows them to act in the greater good, and that's very much like the Cardinal, our main baddie, like the if there is a ruler of Ishgard, it's Thordan, that's very much his story, right? He is like, well, look, we just need to sort this out, and we're going to lie to you about the Ascians, we're going to lie to the Ascians about this, we're going to do this and that and that, and again, very much shaping the past, you know, in the image that suits him.
Yes.
To kind of commit the acts that he wants to commit.
And of course, the Ascians, my friends, always there pulling strings. They, of course, are the ones who encourage the original knights and Thordan the first one, to slay dragons for power.
Yeah, of course.
They are the ones who do it. They step
have you seen their eyes? They're awesome.
They're very. Do you want to?
Have you seen their eyes? Their eyes are incredible. You should stab those eyes out.
Guys.
Keep them in your pocket.
Now, I don't know where the Ascians go or what happens, but
how big are they and how small are they? Because sometimes they fit in someone's pocket and sometimes they're like massive.
My question is like, what is the texture? Because a lot of people are holding them and I'm like, are they slimy? Yeah. Are they hard? Are they squeak? Like, I'm a little bit disturbed by how many like pockets they've got.
We know that they're interchangeable, right?
So
like, because
you can just
like Nidhogg gets his eyes taken out and like he borrows his brother's eye, which is great, and like a big twist that comes later on and stuff like that. So, you know, they're interchangeable, like pogs or something. You just like pop them in. Yeah, or just like, you know, customizable dragon.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Like Mr. Potato Dragon.
Yeah, Mr. Potato Dragon. That's the one. That's the one. So yeah, that's my question about eyes. And also when we do eventually like win at the end, and we've got Nidhogg's eye, and we're like, we should get rid of this. Like the last thing we want is for someone to get hold of this eye. That would be the worst thing that could possibly happen. This eye is so powerful and so dangerous. We need to put it somewhere really, really safe, where no one can get it. Not a man, not a dragon. No, what are we going to do with it? It's like, well, we've got like a huge city here with like loads of safes and stuff, or we know loads of magic people. Maybe we can get some. It's like, or shall we throw it off this cliff?
Oh my God, we're going to talk about this because, yeah.
And it takes like a patch. It's like one patch later, someone's got the eye, and you're like, oh. And like I say, this is played out on a grand narrative level, but also on a micro narrative level. Is the conflict between those who wish to keep the truth of the past hidden, and those who are willing to learn and accept change and be different. And obviously, the obvious example of that is like the main story, right? Like you would have to say one of our main antagonists, Nidhogg, knows exactly what the past is, and is actually right. And kind of in a way, he won't sway from the truth. It's like Thordan won't sway from his lie, and Nidhogg won't sway from his truth, and they're both equally destructive. In a way, it's like I know what did happen, but I'm gonna and that's why I'm gonna destroy you all, even though these are the sins of your fathers, sort of thing. These are like thousands of years ago, and like that kind of lack of compromise is what makes him a baddie and him an antagonist and someone that we do have to take down, no matter how much you can sympathize with his story. Hreisvelga's kind of willingness to bend is a lot to do with like Shiva and the effect that she's had on him. But that obviously happens like on a character level as well. You've got that conflict between Estinien, who even when he learns the truth, it doesn't sway him, and he still sticks to his objective, which was when he thought history was different. But then you get someone like Ysayle, who is willing to accept like a difference in her story, and this story that she's dedicated her life to, and that she was like, I am Shiva, and I'm going to lead these people, these dragons, to like their justice, and then is like, oh, and she learns different things about her own story and about the story of the world, and she's like, okay, well, you know what? Maybe peace is a better idea. You see that with Alphinaud. He has been forced to learn some very bitter truths about himself before the expansion starts, which he spends the expansion coming to terms with himself. And like you see it with a lot. Obviously there's we start the expansion with a kind of a narrative that has been fed to us by the monetarists of Uldar, right? Regarding certain characters that turns out not to be true, and like finding the truth is what like kind of saves us about that and what have you. You have Ysayle, who is keeping like the fact that how does Matoya put it? The light is dimming, the light is going out.
Yes, from her eyes, right?
Yeah, right. Because like she is kind of she's dying, right? Something that hasn't really been touched on since. But which is it's there, and it's there the whole time, and so she's keeping that secret from people, and that's probably going to have an effect at some point as well. And just like this, it's having chosen that as their main theme. It's really interesting to see them explicitly explore that theme in so many different ways, on so many different levels, and so many different sizes. And one of the reasons I love Heavensward so much is because it's such a focused expansion in the way that it tells its story. It's so tight and it's so focused, and it's all like it all feels like it's one story and one expansion, even when it starts going off into Stormblood stuff, right? And that's the same with its themes. It's got like one or two themes, and it just everything is about that, and it just sticks to it and just finds different ways of exploring.
But so many different perspectives.
So brilliant in a way, like a novel would. And like it's like genuinely one of the reasons I want to make this big video about it is because like it genuinely bears analysis like a novel does, because it works in the same way. Which for a video game anyway, but for an MMO,
expansion, like not even the
mind blowing. And like I will never stop being impressed with its focus to its themes and to its story and to, like, the way it explores that in its characters. And I'm just in awe of it. I think it's great.
Section 4, Ishgard. Okay, this is just a quick one, but I feel like...
Wait, hang on.
Ishgard.
Can I pretend that I chose it off of here?
Yeah, there you go.
Should we do Ishgard next?
Which you misspelled on the sticky note.
I can't believe you misspelled Ishgard.
If you're going to misspell it in any way.
My history is that you wrote this and you wrote it wrong.
Oh, wow.
That's the story I'm telling everyone.
Well, let's present 20 different characters and perspectives which will tell this story in still a neat and focused way. So, like, I just want to mention Ishgard. I love it as a capital city. It is brilliant as a base. It's beautiful. I mean, the designs on it are like, it's my taste, I guess. Just like gorgeous. When you see it looming in the distance before you even get there, it's cool. When you go through the gate, it's amazing. I just love it, and it acts perfectly, I think, as it's this hub that you return to throughout the story. It's very like, you know, I had my return button bound there for most of the expansion, and I know in other ones you shift around quite a bit. It's like you always come home to this base, even after you've done journeys, even after you've discovered things about dragons. This ties into, I think, the storytelling being so neat and focused. Because you do go back there all the time, and then you sit down with your friends and you tell the people there what's happened, and then you go off again. And I like it being used literally as this base in the expansion, because it gives me a sense of like, this is my home, right?
And it's not just your base. It is also the thing that at the end of the day you are protecting. Like, you're not there just to live there. You're there to protect this place, like, because dragon's going to eat it.
Yep.
You know, and so it's something that could feasibly cease to exist.
And I know that's such like a basic trope, right? Like, it's a city, we protect the city, we go back to the city, but it works so well, especially when the story starts. You start learning all these different perspectives, right? You start learning about the different histories that have been going on, but there is like this site where that is concrete and that you can go back to and like think about what's happened.
So the site is concrete, and yet the story of it is not, because you arrive there thinking that the history of Ishgard is one thing, and then you learn that it's something else. And like, in your time there, you literally overthrow the leadership of this city, and like, when you leave it, it's on a path to kind of like equality and a fairer society and things like that, as well as a peaceful coexistence with the dragon. So by the time you leave, this place is like, from the inside, unrecognizable. You know, important characters have died. The whole way the city is set up and what the city even stands for is completely different. And you know, the characters that you've met there are different and changed. And again, that is some really tight and awesome storytelling for like from any RPG, but particularly from an MMO. And yet, despite how much has changed on the inside, again, on the outside, it is exactly the same, because it's like this everlasting sort of like rock and symbol, and it's just effing cool, isn't it?
Like real world cities, like old cities that have been around, kind of, you know, like in the same way, right? Like you say, that the story has changed and the history has changed so much. Like the actual history of these buildings is like so complex. It stays the same, but you know that it's gone from being lorded over by Thornton to having like a House of Lords and a House of Commons, and the actual...
that's basically what they do, by the way. For those who don't know, what they do is they install the British politics.
Literally, not what I was expecting.
No, and
maybe
also,
not my ideal choice.
Can I just say that ain't going to work?
Yeah. That might.
We've got some history we can show you here. Exactly. So they don't exactly install democracy, but it's better than what they inherited. Put it that way.
But in the same way that, like, when you walk around London, for example, which is a great city, you see the foundations, like Roman, you know, walls up through everything else in between, and you see it and you realize how much history is there. I don't very often feel like the weight of history in a video game city, but I totally get it in Ishgard.
Yeah, totally. Something we'll talk about which really helps as well, which I still think Heavensward does better than any other 14 expansion, is the music. But we'll touch on that, right?
Section 5, Death. Okay, so we're going to talk about death and dying in video games, which, I mean, you can die and then you can come back.
I do quite a lot.
Yeah,
I like an embarrassing amount, actually.
Yeah, right?
As it goes.
It happens. And, you know, characters have died in Final Fantasy leading up to this, but there's something, you know, much how like kind of the history becomes really real in this expansion, like the kind of the weight of the city becomes really real in this expansion. I felt personally like death and people's reactions to death and actual deaths really kind of hit me in a different way than they have up until now. No disrespect to Moonbreeder, I'm still thinking of her like every day. So I mean, when the expansion starts, we are still recovering from what we think has happened with the Sultana. We think the Sultana has died, right? Like we're refugees, basically. We're hiding out because everyone thinks that we have committed regicide and that we've killed the little princess queen muffin lady, and they take us into Ishgard because of that. So we're still like, we're thinking about that. As it turns out, she's still alive, which is very important.
As it turns out, everyone is, because, you know, we know from the end of the like Heavensward trailer that Rauban's still alive, and you know, I can't imagine many people really thought that the Scions had died, but it's feasible that they had. You know, we hadn't found any. We don't find any, like, for quite a lot of the expansion as well. So like, there's the fate of them and whether they're still alive hang over us for a lot of the expansion too.
Yeah. So there's some like major character deaths in Heavensward. Spoilers. Obviously, if you haven't, don't watch this video if you haven't played Heavensward. My God, what are you doing? What are you doing?
You spoiled the themes for me, Evitel.
So I mean, one of the main characters who goes down quite dramatically is Haurchefant too.
And they really lay it on thick with how chummy Haurchefant is with you.
Oh, he
adores
you.
From like the ARR like patch stuff, he's like, you're amazing. Yeah. You're brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, we're such good friends. Have another beer. Yeah. I'll look after you. Don't worry, everyone.
To be fair, he does look after you, like when you're on the run.
Dude, he is such a bro.
And I was like, okay, you know, again, I was like, all right, okay, fine. This guy's a little bit like all over me, but you know, it's all right. It's cool. And he dies kind of spectacularly, and his like his shield is pierced and he's killed, and
blood comes out of his mouth, which means proper death, proper real death.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my God, like that's so intense. And of course he has that, like, he's dying and he tells you to smile, which if anyone else told me to smile, I'd be like, get out of here. But when he does it and he's dying, and I'm like, okay,
I will. Oh.
I think your character does smile at him before.
I don't think yours does.
Yeah.
You've got your character's had like your face is set in a grimace.
Yeah, she gives him a smile, and it kills me. And that was like quite horrible to watch. And everyone, all the characters are like quite shaken by this. What really destroyed me though wasn't his death, but his dad's reaction afterwards. And I think it's because I'm a parent now. I don't know, but it is just Count Edmond is just very bravely mourning the death of his son, and in the manor, and it just I just completely lost it there.
Oh, yeah. Because like the actor who plays, he's amazing as well.
Yeah.
Like he's doing all the narration and stuff, and obviously he very sadly died very recently.
Yeah.
And
I think that was all part of it when I was hearing it.
Maybe kind of hits even a bit harder.
Yeah. So it's like, oh God. So we lose Haurchefant. We lose Ysayle, who like very heroically rides in on Hraesvelgr. Like we kind of get Hraesvelgr on our side eventually, and she manifests this avatar of Shiva, which she's really proud of, and she even calls Hraesvelgr like my love, and he shuts her down right away and is like, you're not Shiva. You're just like all of the primals are. They're this collective summoning of people's wishes and dreams and like prayers, right? And he's like, you're not real. And she's crushed by this at first when she first learns it. She's like, oh my God, like I kind of started loving this dragon, being this avatar of Shiva, and now it doesn't mean anything. But she comes in when we're in a tight spot with the Garleans, and she like rides in on Hraesvelgr and she becomes Shiva, and like she is such a badass, and she's killed, she dies, and she falls down into this like emptiness of nothing, and she's gone, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Thank goodness she didn't fall off the cliff, otherwise we'd never have been able to find her.
Yeah. And as she's dying, she's like, thank you for helping me see the light, for helping me understand. And you're like, oh God.
It's really interesting because obviously Hraesvelgr is flying her in there, and when we encounter him later on, he still has like no desire to get involved with any of this, and we're like, well, why did you fly like Ysayle in there?
Yeah.
He's like, that was for her.
Yeah.
So it does kind of show that they've kind of reconciled in a way as well.
Even if it's not the same thing, they've kind of recognized this bond between human and dragon, which it's and
between their own experiences, like it's almost like Hraesvelgr is like, you're not Shiva, but in a way you believing in her and thinking that you were her is also kind of cool and nice, and that in itself does give us a bond, even if it's not the bond that you think it is.
Totally.
And so like it is very much portrayed afterwards when we meet him, that because he's not free of risk there himself, like flying her in so she can make this huge sacrifice is like a kindness from him, and is a gift from him to her.
Yeah. And then we have these kind of lots of like close encounters with death, like Vidofnir is attacked by Nidhogg when she comes to kind of parley with Ishgard. We think she's definitely dead. She's not, thankfully. And then there's Estinien who in a very important moment, he's just like got these eyes and he's like, oh no. Like I thought that was like, it kind of made me laugh. He was like, oh no, the eyes.
I love that because like all through the expansion, like he's got this eye, right? And people are like, that eye, it might take you over. Yeah. And he's like, don't worry. I spent my entire life making sure that the eye doesn't take me over. It's always on my mind. Nothing can ever make me forget not to let the eye take me over. And it's like, oh, now I've got two eyes. Oh, no, I forgot. And Nidhogg is literally like, you let your guard down. It's like, why? Estinien, dude, what were you thinking about instead? It's like when Ray accidentally summons the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It's like, what did you think of, Estinien? I tried to think of something that could never, ever possibly destroy us. It's like, well, tough. Now you're taking over. Now you're,
Yeah, so quite horribly, Estinien becomes like we basically kind of fight Nidhogg and defeat him, but Estinien like becomes this avatar of Nidhogg. Becomes this like horrible human dragon. You hate them. Like sometimes he is in Estinien's form, and other times he is in like Nidhogg's form, and other times he's just kind of like flaming. But he is there to like enact the ultimate vengeance. Like he's got both the eyes. He is ready to just like wreak havoc. And when you face down with the Estinien Nidhogg big bad at like the end of one of the patches on the final steps of faith, which you return to steps of faith where you originally fought a dragon coming in. Now you're doing it again.
Is that 3.3?
Yeah. That is just like immense. And you're doing it, and all along, even Emric, this is this very naughty boy, was like, we have to eliminate Nidhogg at all costs, even if it means Estinien dies. And we're like, whoa.
Look, I'm on Emric's side, honestly.
Well, I know. And
if he dies, he dies.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, okay. He's like, we have to protect the city. And Alfie is like, hey, listen, in a kind of a wonderful growing up Alphinaud moment, is like, I think I've realized something, and I think it's really important that we protect our friend. And I was like, okay. And he's like, it's going to be hard, but I think we should do this. And I was like, okay. I mean, I'm kind of on Emmeric's side, but okay. But he kind of won me over with that. And so we do get to a bit when it's, he's weakened. We fought him. Alphinaud is like, take one eye, and the Warrior of Light takes the other. And we're like, let's get the eyes. And it looks like we're not going to make it. It looks like we're not going to be able to save and retain his life while destroying Nidhogg. However, and this is like my favorite bit in the whole thing, and I get a little bit teary just thinking about it, even though it's like so corny. It's so corny, but I loved it. So you get these like specters, these like ghosts of Haurchefant and Ysayle, like helping pull the eyes out. And I was like, no. And I don't think they say anything. I don't remember if
I'm
they
not
say,
sure if that's true.
I can't remember, but I think it's because I couldn't see through all the tears. Because I was so emotional, because I was like, oh my God. And you're like, yes, Alphinaud was right. We have to do our best to save our friend. And
it's your friends saving you.
Exactly,
Right?
It is your friends. Even, I don't know if they're actually there or if it's just supposed to represent like their memories.
Dude, they're actually there. There's no way I didn't have a double date with Haurchefant and Ysayle just for a little bit of 2.3, okay?
Just
that
grabbing
shit
the
happened.
eyes for you.
Yeah, totally.
They like put their hands on yours and it just
It's
that
like,
was
put these somewhere
so...
safe, sure.
It was so touching, and I thought that was like such a powerful moment, and it made me think about why are the deaths in Heavensward, like why am I crying at this video game? I think it does have to do with that, which is like the core of Final Fantasy XIV, and at least Heavensward in a lot of ways. Like the message is like you have to do right by your friends, and let's, we go on hard journeys together, and we protect each other, and we sometimes lie to each other, and we betray each other, and we don't trust each other, but like we protect our friends at all costs. And it's I think Haurchefant says something like, he's always going on about this. He's like, we always have to do what we can for those who need it the most. And I was like, okay, my God, fine. And then after he died, every time I get a dialogue choice that's like, what do you think, a warrior of light? Are you going to do this? And it's like, yeah, sure, let's do the mission. I always choose the one that's like, for those we have not saved and those we can yet save.
For our friends.
For our friends.
I'll always be there for my friends. And you're doing that in honor of Haurchefant, right?
I do it every time. And I think that it's because like the way these characters are presented, the way they died, the way their memories affect you, like my character is changed because I'm on board. Like I believe that now, and everything I do is like for my friends in Final Fantasy now. Number 6, dungeons and trials that blew my mind.
Here we go, dungeons and trials that blew your mind. Did you like them that much?
I really enjoyed them. And I don't know if it's because like I've started playing a bit more with our free company and our guild and like doing extremes. Like we're still doing ARR extremes. I haven't even joined with any Heavensward stuff with them yet, but I think it's because I'm doing them a bit more. I'm really finding them enjoyable. And I liked the ones in Heavensward quite a lot. I liked the way they told stories. Maybe it's because they just had loads of dragons. Could be. There's the area where you kind of face off against Nidhogg and like his other like dragon buddies and friends and minions. And there's of course the vault where you face off against the knights.
Oh yeah.
When they first get like, and sorry, that's what they do.
I mean, they do. They do. Luckily, they're still quite easy to beat.
I love how the vault, the actual setting, is used multiple times.
Yeah.
Like, I love that you go back in there. You fight them, and then like you free captives and stuff as well. I thought that one was really fun. And then of course when you get to Azys-La, which I know you did not like.
I mean, okay, to say I didn't like it.
Okay, you didn't like the area.
Yeah, it's just not my sort of zone. You know, like I never liked it when I was playing console games when you get to the final zone, like the final level, and it was like, it's the final level, right? So it's in hell or it's in the alien spaceship, and like it's always just dark. It's always just like really dangerous feeling. It makes sense, right? But like I've never liked that, and it just made me. And it's meant to make you like we talked before about how Final Fantasy XIV like very much tries to give you the feeling of old Final Fantasy console games, basically, and that was very much. It felt like the final level of the console game, but like I say, once I got my dragon, I was fine and I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I love Allegan stuff. Like I love the Crystal Tower. I love just anything with the Allegan culture, which I have a feeling is probably going to pop up more in my Final Fantasy future. I don't know, but so I loved seeing that mix of suddenly dragons and Allegan, like technology. And I'm not a huge fan of like genres that meld, like high tech and like high fantasy. But this totally worked for me.
I'm totally down with it in Final Fantasy.
Yeah, it works
100%.
exactly in Final Fantasy. It just works for me for whatever reason. It's really cool. And then there you face off and you learn about Azizla. You learn about how the Allegans enslaved like primals, including Tiamat, the dragon, who is Bahamut's partner, and she who is in the moon. She tells us he is in the moon. Okay, and then she is like, I've been here forever. Don't set me free. Like I'm just gonna stay here forever. And she is enslaved, and she reveals this this. While all this stuff with humans and dragons is happening, you realize that there's this like immense cruelty that has been doled out to the dragons as well. And you're like, ooh, yikes, And then there, right after that bit, you face off against the Asians. Yeah, those guys who they're always just popping up.
Always just there, aren't they?
Yeah, when there's like a great source of power. But you really smack them down this time, which is really cool. I think you kill one of them, and then you're like, okay, good job, finally. And then of course Thoradin is there all along. The Garleans have been there too because they want.
See, I found all that a bit like.
I didn't care about the Garleans. I was there ready for like Thoradin to do his thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, and Thoradin just turns into a big like super Thoradin.
He's a primal Thoradin.
Yeah, totally. And it's just like, it's kind of what I expected.
Yeah, I kind of expected.
And I know I've seen people
like
really get off on like the design of him and stuff.
Oh
like
my
that.
God, he's so cool.
Yeah, for me, I was just a bit like, yeah, it's fine. Look, I'm saying this from the point of view of someone who
that's fair.
gushes over this expansion, who loves it, right? But I was just like, for me, that whole zone, and that's like far more what I was expecting, right?
Sure.
So there was no surprises there. It was just, like part of the lore stuff with some dragons and stuff. Yeah, okay, but with Thoradin, it went exactly how I thought it was going to, until the end of the encounter, where you get, I think, one of the best moments in the entire expansion, where you have defeated Thoradin, and he's looking up at you, and he's like, "What are you?"
And the screen goes red or like dark.
Well, and you're shown in like silhouette, and your face is in darkness.
Yes.
And you're just standing there,
Yes.
and you're like, "Shit, what am I?"
Am I the baddie?
Thoradin's got a point.
Yeah.
What am I?
Yeah.
Like, I thought I was just a cool, like, video game person, and that's why I could beat everyone, right? But Thoradin's got a point. How did I beat Super Thoradin? That was pretty awesome of me.
Yeah.
I mean, I had quite a few friends, but canonically, I just did this, and okay.
Yeah, so for me, all of that was worth it, like, for those bits at the end. Yeah. Also, I thought the fight was really cool, and the effects are, like, so...
But I felt that was a great undermining of it, because, like, all through that fight, I was enjoying it, but I was
am
this
the hero.
This is very much Japanese video game, right?
Yeah.
And then when he's down there, and it just has this suggestion of what actually is going on with the Warrior of Light. Like this thing of like, if people like Thoradin are this scared of me, and we always joke about how it's time to go and kick some ass, so it's the Warrior of Light and stuff. But yeah, and just having, just showing us looking that menacing, and that kind of, like
did not feel
in shadow,
good.
And yeah, totally
did not feel good,
and fascinating from kind of like, ooh, where's the story kind of going point of view, and I loved that. So I mean, the moment where I got on the dragon and flew up. And that moment at the end of the encounter made it all worthwhile for me.
And then, of course, you have the final steps of faith, which you've talked about. Which
so many people were upset that you didn't do that on stream. Like, it's one of the things that people really love watching you do. Like, they were like, has Evie done 3.3?
Oh my God, I know.
Like, you can see why, right? Because, I mean, that kind of the whole cutscene with a fight between the two dragons. Yeah. Incredible.
So cool.
And then having that as a big like trial at the end.
I actually really appreciate that I didn't watch it on stream, because I could cry freely. Like, not even kidding.
Well, you didn't play it on stream.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's why, like, I'm glad that it didn't happen on stream, because I felt like I could have like my moment with the end of the Dragon Song War, and
Fair.
So good. Speaking of, number 7, the music, which is totally on another level. Sick jams right there. Okay, so I like Final Fantasy music.
It's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, we've got
good.
we're kind of all in on Final Fantasy music now. In fairness, 14 music in particular. We've got the vinyl set downstairs, which you might have seen in our last video. And the great thing is, like, I'm not allowed to listen to expansions that Evie hasn't played yet, right?
No. So like I'm only just able to listen to the Stormblood one. But yeah, so the music in Heavensward I find extremely special. And again, even though it could be like you enter Camp Dragonhead, even in the pre-patch stuff, and you hear organs and you're like, okay, there's the church, there are organs, there are knights, there are dragons. I've seen all this stuff before. These are popular fantasy things going on. Okay, but I think there's something so good about it. So I mean, talking about Dragon Song, I think this is a good place to start. As you're queuing for the final steps of faith, I love this. I ended up queuing for like half an hour because no one was playing it. Like I was just on at a weird time, and like everyone's done that bit, and like no one was queuing up to do it. Clearly not part of the roulettes. And they start playing. There's you standing there. Everyone else is gone. There's this kind of break in the bridge, and Nidhogg is there waiting for you. Like you're waiting.
I
to
used that one for ages as well, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they start playing like the vocal version of Dragon Song, which is sung, which has all of the kind of melodies and harmonies from the expansion with lyrics. And I heard it on repeat like 10 times. I just sat there with my headphones on, loving it and listening to it. And again, this is one of those ones that I would have heard beforehand and was like, okay, the ones where people sing, I'm not like, it's not my thing.
You liar, you love it.
It's not my thing.
You love it. If it's like a man singing over an electric guitar, you're just like, yes.
Like some of the primal music, I was like, okay. Now I'm like, I'm down. I get it. I understand why this is happening. I accept it and I love it. And so Dragon Song is, as I think many people will agree, like it is beautiful, and of course tells the story of Heavensward in song through the themes that we hear throughout the entire thing. I'm like, God, that's so good. So I mean, the music is, I think, brilliant. The music of the dragons, like when you first come across, start like parlaying with the dragons, and they have their tower. The music there with the little bagpipes.
Ooh,
I don't know if it's bagpipes.
I don't think they're bagpipes, but they're like, yeah.
Oh, so like just it gives a sense of like things are kind of ancient and different. And the stuff when you're journeying on the big road trip. With these kind of like empty, swirling snowscapes. The music there is insane. The other bits of like where the dragons live. There's a track called Landlords, which is like one of my favorite. But it's actually about like the humans who are the lords of the land, and then the sky lords who are lords of the sky. We've got Matoya's cave music.
Dude, mate, I stayed in Matoya's cave for so long.
I know, when you were there, you're like, Evie, there's a cave, and you just have to like sit and listen to the song that plays here.
Yeah, and I think again, like, Final Fantasy XIV, well known for having pretty good music, really, and just like really kind of motif heavy music as well, and that's definitely the case here. And it's interesting because I think Stormblood uses its music incredibly cleverly, and like there's actually a really good twist, even just involving music in the expansion, which I think is like very well done. But again, you've got it's representing literal places at each end of the world, and so it's brilliant. And the way that you have music representing different things is really great. And Shadowbringer's music is just bangers, like all the way through.
Oh, I can't wait.
But there's something about Heavensward's music which is again so focused, and so like everything in Heavensward, it just all fits perfectly into place, and it's all just where it should be, and it's all doing exactly what it should be doing to make you feel a certain way.
Yeah, and then like going back, and I was just listening to the soundtrack and listening to the motifs, listening to even like the fight music, like when you pull a mob, and hearing like where they all repeat throughout different things. I think it's so cool, and I actually think a really great use of music that totally blew my mind. Sorry, it's an Azisla. So it's this quite like driving theme, right, which is usual, and then you get the organ comes in. Right, so it sounds quite spacey. It sounds like actually a bit of it sounds like the what plays when you die in Mass Effect. They're like, it's like, oh my god, no! Oh, I really need to like switch my Mass Effect to the easy mode. I just want this story anyway. so you have this like, right, okay, you're like, okay, this is kind of advanced technology. We're a little bit spacey right now. But then the organs creep in because there are dragons. And then there's like a funky organ that comes in, which I think is part of the Crystal Tower music. It's like,
and that is so console.
Yes.
That's like console up the wazoo.
It is such console music. And there's a little bit that comes in with like a tinkling piano that's like dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. And then an organ goes ba ba. And to me, this is like the summation of like how like Soken, who does the music for Final Fantasy, clearly people know that he's a genius, but to me, like this, it dawned on me as I was in Azizla listening to this, hearing all the different motifs woven in together in something that should not work. Like it should not work. That the music that plays there shouldn't work, but it does. And I'm like, yes, this is such a banger.
As a musical theatre kid, I love it when musical motifs all come together. It's like they come together in the end of Act 1 song, right? It's like if it's a musical, the song that ends Act 1, all those motifs come together, and it's great. And I love how Final Fantasy XIV music does that.
It is,
and it does it in boss battles and stuff in particular. It's so good.
Yeah,
so good.
Oh,
the music's good.
And number 8. To Stormblood.
Okay, so obviously... Oh, no. I dropped... We can't do it. We can't do the section.
Sorry.
Should we do it anyway?
Let's.
Okay, so like Heavensward, obviously, in the same way that Realm Reborn leads into Heavensward, and we were raving about that earlier, obviously the last 2 patches of Heavensward lead very much into Stormblood. Mm-hmm. See, it wasn't completely useless that we had this cardboard cut out here. 1, worked very well as post-it note holder, and 2, obviously this is when Rauban and Rauban's baddie brother,
Ilberd.
Thank you, God. Ilberd really come to the fore again, and there's another character death as well. Yeah,
so a lot happens in these 2. I think it's like 2 patches to 3, technically 2 little patches towards the end, but like everything happens. We've kind of cleaned up the dragon song more, and we're like, okay, cool, we've got this. Amyric asks you out for dinner. It opens with him being like,
oh my God, you finally get your date?
I finally get my date, and he's like, go to dinner with me. And then the messenger is like, one of the options when you're talking to the messenger is like, what do I wear? And I asked, he's like, you should wear this hunting jacket. And I was like, okay, because I got one at some point in my quest, and I put it on with all my other gear. It just didn't make any sense, but it's the same one Amyric is wearing.
So you're like, you just do that. That's amazing.
I did. I put it on. So in the scene, we're both wearing the same jacket.
That's amazing.
And we're like eating together. And I'm like, yes, this is so good. He's done a lot of stuff in the meantime. He's a busy man. He's a very busy, powerful man, but he's made time to have dinner with me.
Yeah, no shit. He loves you.
And he's like,
loves you so much.
Like, listen, Warrior of Light, what do you want to do with your life? He's like, now that things are, what do you really want? Because I see you fighting for Eorzea. What do you want? And you're like, and then someone barges in and is like, excuse me, time to go. I'm like, no.
Okay, so like, this is also, I love the Amyric stuff, but it's also like an example of something that I think happens quite a lot in Final Fantasy XIV. It's one of the things I really love about it. And I have got in trouble for suggesting this before, but I think that overall, the vast majority of people, including the people that make the game, agree with me on this, that, Final Fantasy XIV does a really good job of allowing you to have your own headcanon when it comes to your character.
Oh, totally.
And not just your character, but your relationships with other characters. Yeah. So quite often, it sets up relationships with other characters that, if you choose to, can be interpreted as just being buddies. But if you choose to, in your headcanon, you could quite easily interpret it as like you have something, like a genuine connection with this character in a much more meaningful way, right? Like Amyric is a great example of that. There are very obvious examples of it in Stormblood, and beyond as well. Like Alisaie clearly is smitten with the Warrior of Light, and other characters as well. And you can go through the entire game not thinking about that in any way, but if you are like an RPer and your headcanon is really important to your character, and if you do want to, like, okay, so there's a particular scene where it kind of really reaches its climax in Stormblood.
Oh, does it?
Where you go. I'm going to tell you this because
I'm ready.
You go training with Lys.
Okay.
Lys is like, let's go up to this statue and train.
Yeah.
And then there is like a cutscene which kind of recreates the Stormblood trailer, where you jump towards each other and your faces in slow motion are approaching each other like that. And then it cuts to the next day, and you're just standing next to each other, and her line is literally pant, well, that wore me out, or something like that. Oh, I think we went a bit, we pushed a bit hard or something. And it's like, yeah, okay, you can easily read that as it's presented, as being like a trade. But, I cannot be alone in thinking that if I wanted to interpret that as me and Lys kind of getting it on, then you could, right?
You totally could.
And that's exactly what happens with this Emyric thing. And you're just like, yeah, me and Emyric would have got together.
Totally would have.
And maybe, I'm sure maybe 90% of you didn't think that at all. It never even occurred to you.
No, thanks.
But there's definitely 10% of people who are like, me and Emyric would definitely have got married. Literally just got married.
Yeah, because he's that
I'd be
kind
like,
of guy.
maybe I do want to settle down. People say Stormblood isn't so good, so maybe I'm just going to maybe I'll just stay here in Ishgard forever, right?
A little bit. But it's true. It does kind of open doors like that. It doesn't necessarily set it in stone, but it does. And I mean, apparently the original voice lines for Horsefant in Japanese are like, "I love you. You're amazing."
They're a lot more intense.
They're very full on. Whereas I mean, he's still pretty full on in English. So I'm just imagining the next level. But you're the warrior of light. You can take it. You can leave it. You can go on. You're a busy.
Who's going to stop you? Frankly,
you're exactly. Yeah, exactly. No one can stop you. You're just going to punch them. So that happens. You're interrupted because Ysayle returns. You finally get to meet Ysayle properly, who I love. She's the coolest teenager. She's so
you have already met her if you've done Coils.
Yes.
In Realm Reborn, which we have done, right?
Which
done.
We
actually did it after this bit in Heavensward. So
you've encountered her. You haven't really spent time with her to such a huge degree, and you actually do get to meet her. She's so she's so collected, and she learns, and she's open-minded, and she's smart. She kind of pokes at Alphinaud. She knows what he's like. She's got a massive sword, a glowing sword that she summons. I mean, she is so cool. And she comes back because we find out that she's been spying on the Warriors of Darkness. So major lore drops happening in this last patch. You find out are, literally kind of counterparts to you, who are here to destroy you and destroy Hydaelyn. So, okay, here's another thing. We find Minfilia. Minfilia comes back.
And she's the last one to come back, because something we've kind of skipped over in this video is finding all the scions.
Yes.
And they're all naked. It's all brilliant. Yeah. They all get designed really, really sexy costumes by Tataru.
Yes. You get your own, which is a mini skirt and a monocle. It's okay, Tataru. All right, fine.
It's she's so thirsty.
Yeah.
I'll design your costume.
Yeah.
It's a belt. Here you go.
I love her. Yeah, so we find Minfilia, who, again, these are huge lore bombs that are happening in these last two patches. And as I'm recovering from the whole Dragon Song thing, I was a little bit overwhelmed. I was like, whoa, this is, a lot is happening. Minfilia is now an avatar for Hydaelyn. She's been absorbed into the life stream. We find out that Urianger has been a double agent with as a warrior of darkness, and he's kind of been leading them on to
eventually get you to fight so that he can save them.
So that Minfilia can go back.
Like all Urianger plans, it's a little bit overcomplicated.
Exactly. And I like how Ysaye's oh, really? You did that, huh? And she's the only one who's
Ysayle represents me in these scenes so much.
Exactly. And for the whole time leading up to it, she's always eyeing him up and down, and she likes him. She cares about him. They clearly have some kind of warm friendship because he gives her a gift, and they have this thing going on. But she's she sees through him. Mm-hmm. She sees that he is very clever, but he's playing these cosmic games.
Imagine you had a friend like that who just never told you anything.
I know.
And you were just dude, just tell us.
I know. I know you're really smart.
It's we've all organised to go to a pub, right? And we get there, and Urianger's not there. And you're Urianger, where are you? We should go out looking for him. And then you get to a different pub, and Urianger's there. And you're why are you in this pub? And he's it was all a plan to make you come to this pub where the pints are cheaper. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, why didn't you just tell us to come to this pub, Urianger? Why did you have to trick us? Why did you just not tell us? We're your friends. We'd have come to this pub if you'd asked us. Like, why did you have to be so deceitful about it? Why wouldn't we want to come to this pub? The pints are cheaper.
I know.
Just tell us the pints are cheaper.
I was
we'll
quite
come.
annoyed. I was really annoyed with him. I'm like, look, I know you think that all other people are fallible, but it's just like, yeah. So like you're getting these like quite big, juicy, chunky lore drops happening. Yeah, we see that Minfilia is never really coming back as a person. Apparently, she is part of Hydaelyn. She goes back with the Warriors of Darkness, who literally want to destroy your planet. They're here to destroy your planet so that their own can be reconstituted. Minfilia is like, I got these guys, and then flies back to their planet, which was a shard of Zodiark. Listen, there's a lot happening, and it makes me think about our last conversation.
I mean, I'm playing Shadowbringers at the moment, right? And I think about our last conversation quite a lot.
Yeah, so I like all these seeds are planted, and I'm like, I kind of have a grasp on this. Clearly, Hydaelyn and Zodiark had a big fight. There's some shattering. Worlds were destroyed. There's a big cosmic battle, and I'm willing to kind of like ride that ride. So that is all happening. Meanwhile, you get into the Stormblood pre-patch stuff, which is you find Ida and Papalymo. They're like, cool. Turns out they've been working with the Alamegan Resistance, who are all Northerners.
They're all Sean Bean.
They're all Sean Bean.
As you would expect, and as you would demand.
They're all
frankly.
like Sean Bean in the desert. Like it's a thing.
Okay, so Ilbird's voice, like they...
Yeah.
In Realm Reborn, everyone's got different voices, and Heavensward, everyone gets the voice that will be their voice from then on in, really. And yeah, making Rauban and Ilberd, and therefore anyone who comes from Alamigo, just Northern, like English Northern, is genius and beautiful and wonderful, and makes Stormblood better than it has any right to be, frankly.
Yeah, it's like the neglected peoples.
Yeah.
Like the oppressed, the Northerners. I love it. So you find out, another big thing. Ida isn't Ida. Ida is Lice.
How did that hit for you?
I did not care. It's like, I know it's a big thing, but I was like, so, okay, I'm still with you. Like, you're still the kind of slow lady who likes punching things.
Yeah.
You know, I never liked you that much, but I care about you. You're one of my friends. Okay, you're a different person. You're pretending to be your sister. Now I know you're you. But you're still the person that I've been with all along. So I didn't have a huge response to that. What was yours?
Neither. No, again, I was like incredibly underwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
Well, especially because there's so much big stuff happening around it as well.
Well, exactly.
So it's like very much like, should we stop this big dragon being born?
Yeah. So there's the lice stuff. We find her. We find Papalymo as well. Cool. Scions reunited. Ilberd comes back. This is the patch where everyone comes back.
And in fairness, Ilberd gets like, we've seen Ilberd throughout the expansion in bits and bobs, like peppered in throughout like the main storyline. We rescue Rauban,
of course,
and
right?
then we find Cupcake, and like all the rest of it. Muffin,
like,
I should call her, not Cupcake.
Exactly.
I'm thinking of Arcane. Sorry, and so that those things are peppered in, and Ilberd is part of that as well, like repeatedly. But I mean, he gets like a big send-off. I mean, fair play.
Oh my God,
I kind of always liked Ilberd, not as a person, right?
Yeah.
But as a character and as a presence, and very much kind of like Nidhogg in a way. Very, very kind of stuck on his path of like, revenge and stuff. And literally in the end sparks the events that cause the war that starts Stormblood.
Yeah, and of course his aim is to just like destroy the Garleans, like at any cost, right? Yeah, so there's this parallel with Nidhogg, right? And he's been posing as the Griffin, as this like leader of the Alamegans who's like stirring stuff up. You fight him. There's a huge battle. He's got the eyes. How did that happen? Where did he find?
No one could get the eyes. Wait a minute. We put them in that really safe place. We threw them off a random cliff. Yeah. How could anyone have found them?
No idea.
How did they think to go down?
Yeah. And so he has acquired the eyes, and he's like, I'm going to use this to destroy the Garlean Empire
he
forever.
Massacres like the forces that are there.
Yeah, he kills his own people, right? He's kind of willing to do this at all costs. And then he's like, ha, and jumps off backwards off of a wall. and kills himself. And in doing so, basically like summons the energy of himself and everyone who's died around him and the eyes.
It's like their pure hatred.
Exactly. It's funneled into this horrible dragon-like primal thing. All I know is that the one that caused a realm reborn is like in the moon or was in the moon.
Right.
And this one seems similar to that. So no, this one is actually called Shinryu.
Right, yeah.
And I think the other one is Bahamut.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
So again, this is my spotty knowledge. But yes, I had the same thought because it's like, oh, this thing is going to hatch from this big pulse of energy.
Like we've seen this before.
Exactly,
right?
we've seen this before. It's gonna exactly. My mind went there too, and then it's like, oh no, this is Shinryu, and I was like, oh, okay, fine. Another familiar face shows up. It's Nero. Yay!
It's Nero.
Nero shows up purely just to be like, hey, I got this thing that can fight this big primal thing. Should we just activate it? It's an elegant thing. It is literally made to fight primals. So should we do this? And I'm like, oh God, okay. So like everything is happening at once. You summon Omega. It has a big fight with the dragon primal thing. They go pew, and they're like, oh, where did they go? But in order to save us, Papalymo dies. There's a big death at the end. Papalymo.
And he does the same thing that Louisoix does at the end of
Yes.
1.0, right?
Yeah, so he casts a spell using all of his own like life force and energy to protect everyone as long as he can. And we know that we have to leave him and he's going to die. So, it's sad.
And it's done really, really well.
It is done really well.
And it actually made me like Papalymo.
Me too, which I wasn't like. I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
You know he's going to die because he takes over the narration. He
Yes.
starts narrating.
Yeah, yeah.
You're going to die.
Yeah, that's very true,
and the
actually.
narration takes on the tone of like, well, we have to do what we have to do to save our friends. I'm like, you're gonna die.
I think that's great. We are at war now. This has started the war.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to fight in the war. Like we've been trying to avoid this. This is like the big thing that we've been trying to avoid because, the Garleans could probably wipe us out if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And they just hang back there behind the wall and that's great. And, we got this kind of thing going on. But now a war's started. Like we're actually going to have to do something about it.
Yeah.
So, and you have played like the very beginnings of Stormblood.
I have.
Obviously we'll do a proper video about that as well. But what are your very like initial kind of reactions on that?
It's all right. Listen, I had to change all of my amazing, like, Ishgard, beautiful, like, beautiful, like, lordly lady, like, I'm wearing my tights and my big puffy sleeves glam, to I'm a desert fighter. Just
it's certainly
fine.
not as, like, immediate as
It's
Heavensward.
not, and I'm enjoying it, but I'm like, still recovering. I'm still recovering from Heavensward stuff, and I'm still thinking about it. 9. Which you've written resolution, but it really just should say Emyric again.
We're finishing with Emyric.
We're gonna bookend with Emyric.
How do you want to finish this?
So the stuff with Emyric kind of this all happens before these like last two patches, right? You defeat Nidhogg. He steps up and he's like, oh man, I'm Thoradin's illegitimate son. I have some power. I'm going to dissolve this theocracy. Cool. I'm going to found a House of Lords and a House of Commons.
Even though we're all lords now?
Yeah, exactly. Let's not get into the details. I'm going to revamp the city entirely. I'm going to get over my issues of basically being an illegitimate child, which I think he dealt with quite well all along. Whoops, I don't want to be in politics, but everyone has appointed me as like the head of the House of Lords. So, yay! But I love that like all of this stuff happens, and because he is all through this expansion, he's been there. He's been this kind of diplomat. You've seen him kind of watch the other stories happening. You've seen him react to things. You've seen him have some opinions, like with Estinien, right? Like I was shocked when he was like, oh, he's gonna have to, if he has to die, he has to die. So he's this kind of pragmatist who you realize is just like very good. Like he wants the good for his people. Like he doesn't want to rule even. He just wants the truth to be out and the people to be like governed fairly. And it's just like, it's so wholesome. So I just like thinking of Emyric as like a bookend to my Heavensward experience, right? Or at least the story of like the Dragon Song War. And because, all this stuff, all the other stuff happens after
the
that.
story of Heavensward like ends in 3.3. Right?
Exactly. But I do love kind of seeing him as this character in the beginning, which I was like, nah. which then you warm up to, and then I like seeing him as less. He does loads, he does a lot, but it's more like he's just this kind of like neutral observer and like taker in of things that happen. Like you deal out, you know, the damage, and you make a lot of decisions, and he is there to kind of like to hold the story together. Like he kind of like bookends it. And speaking of books, like my favorite bits that you've mentioned before is the narration that goes through of the Count, who's kind of telling the story of Heavensward, and who thinks of Amyric basically as a son. Like he there explicitly in one moment he's like, I can't bear to lose another son. Just talking about you, Amyric. Which I love, and I love coming back to the Count, and I love how at the end of 3.3 it is him, like he's like literally writing the end of the book, you know, and he's like, and this is the story of Heavensward, the end. And listen, I wouldn't let a lot of people get away with that. I would not let a lot of people get away with that, but I was like 100% on board for this to be told as like Edmund's memoirs, the story of Heavensward, my memoir, the end, like in The Hobbit, all right, like there and back again. Hobbit like it totally worked for me. And again, it's something that should not have worked, something that I should not have liked, I loved. Well, there we go. And that's the story of the expansion. What was if you had to pick out one moment from the entire experience as the best, what would you choose? I think it's the bit where the ghosts of Horsefant and Ysayle come and help you. Honestly, that's like gonna stick in my mind forever. I love it. I'm totally down with it. Yeah, I think I got nothing wrong with that at all. It's so lovely. Absolutely awesome. Great. Well, I guess we'll come back and we'll do this again. I can't wait. When it's time for Stormblood. So you got to get working through that. I mean, you're not going to be ready for Endwalker, are you? Oh my God, no. Not even close. But I am going to push through Stormblood. And I'm excited to see where it takes me. It pleases me that you've paid so much attention to the stuff going on in Heavensward, because, you know, some of it's going to be quite useful. Is it? Yeah. Well, I can't wait to talk about Stormblood. I got the feeling we'll have some, it won't be quite as gushing as this one, and that there might be some differences there's a lot in tone, perhaps, much like there is in the expansion itself. This has been very gushy. Yeah, it's all right. People love a gush. Thank you for bearing with me here. But thank you for joining us today for this incredibly long video talking about it. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. If you like this little setup that we've got here, check out our other channel, T&E Talks, where we talk about media. We've got a Squid Game video. Much like this. We've got a Dune video. Yeah. We've got a video where I've had the footage for like a week now, where we talk about sex education, the TV show, and Arcane we're going to do as well. Next. Can't wait. It's going to be awesome. And of course, check out all our other Final Fantasy content on this channel as well. If you enjoyed the video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make all of our work happen. Yep. And they really do. So thank you. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Ida. I mean Lys. I mean Taliesin. From me. And me, Evitel. Until next time, cheerio.